Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to lesson 45. And we will briefly go over what we went over last time because we got started on mais ou menos. We talked mostly about it, but there are a couple things that I wanted to go over again. So we will do that. Oops, forgot to share. How is everybody this morning? Okay, great. Okay, here we go. Mais ou menos. So, the first thing that we need to remember is that if someone asks, how are you? We don't say, I'm more or less. And we definitely don't say, I'm so-so. Those are two things that I'm more or less needs to be in front of an adjective. I'm more or less happy. I'm more or less content. I'm more or less whatever. But it's more formal. It's not very often used when someone asks, how are you? To say more or less and then an adjective, but at least it's grammatically correct. I'm so-so, don't use it. I'm so-so comes from a linguagem from like the 1800s. So don't use so-so. No one, I have never heard a native speaker say so-so. So don't use it. It's that simple. So how are you? So what do you say if someone asks how you are? You say, I'm not bad or I'm okay. The most common probably is I'm okay. In my experience, the most used. And we have something important here is about the inflection of our voice and the way we say it. The tone of voice is as important as what you say, because in most cases, if someone asks how are you, if you say I'm okay, just a regular inflection, regular tone of voice, then it'll be understood that you're mais ou menos. So if I ask a friend how are you and they say I'm okay, I ask, oh, what's up, what's wrong? Because they, for some reason, they didn't say I'm good or I'm great or one of the other options. Same thing with not bad. And I like to say when we have mais ou menos, then we have mais para menos. Not bad is mais para mais. I'm okay is mais para menos. So how are you? I'm not bad. If one of my friends says I'm not bad, I usually won't say, oh, what's wrong? Que tem de errado? If they say I'm okay, I usually will say, oh, what's wrong? What's going on? What's happening? But not because not bad is mais para mais, then I usually don't ask them what's wrong if they say not bad. But if they say I'm not bad, then I know that they're pretty good. And if someone says, if I ask, how are you? I'm okay. Right. So that the voice there, you can tell by the tone of voice that they're pretty good. But that is much less used. Not bad and I'm okay are much less used as pretty good than they are as mais ou menos. Agora, if we ask someone, are you happy? They can answer kind of or sort of. So if someone asks you a question and the answer is mais ou menos, and it's not how are you, then you can just use kind of, which is meio, or mais ou menos if it's by itself. So I'm kind of sad. I like to translate kind of and sort of as meio. Eu estou meio triste, pouco triste. So I'm kind of sad. Kinda e sorta are reductions. So kind of becomes kinda. Sort of becomes sorta, and we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to start to use more of the word of as a reduction. Of and to are two words that are extremely reduced in English. Instead of, we most of the time we say kind of, kinda. When we have before a while back, we talked about a lot of. I have a lot of friends. But most native speakers won't say I have a lot of friends. They'll say I have a lot of friends, a lot of. So this of becomes a when it's used in a sentence with normal inflection, normal everything else. Beto, good morning. Tá no mudo. Acho que eu fui baixar a mão, eu fechei sem querer.
Ok. Kind of, ou sort of.
Kind of.
Kind of ou sort of. Kind of, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Mas eu sempre tenho que usar um adjetivo depois. Ou sad, ou happy.
Not always. That's a good question. But so if someone asks, so if someone says, how are you? Then you would need some adjective. But if someone says, for example, are you happy? You can just say kinda or sorta, right? So if someone gives you an adjective here, then you can just say kind of or sort of. Are you mad?
Okay.
So go ahead.
Kind of or sort of é tipo de, né? Alguma coisa tipo.
It can be, not always. So remember, we're talking about expressions here. So it's not exactly always that. It can be mais ou menos, or it can be meio.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a very good point. It's not kind of and sort of, we can't just put in one, say it's always mais ou menos, or it's not always meio, but it's one of those that is a little bit flexible.
Kinda seria, então, mais ou menos para menos.
I would say they're basically the same. They're synonyms that mean mais ou menos, and I wouldn't say, let me think a little bit. Yeah, to me, that they're both mais ou menos para mais ou menos in the middle. And the thing of kind of is informal, and sort of is extremely informal. So kind of is informal, sort of is extremely informal. I would say to any of my students that are going to have a job interview in English, do not use sort of in a job interview, would be my advice to any students.
Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you. So continuing with mais ou menos, when we talk about numbers, when we have measurements, when we have distances, when we have those kinds of things, then how far is it? Quão longe é? Qual é a distância? It's about, so I'm going to actually change these colors because sometimes my students get confused on if you should say both. So let's do this. So if you ask how far is it, then it's about 5 miles, or it's around 5 miles. So if you say it's about 5 miles, it's about is perto de, around, cerca de, ao redor de. So you can also use around. There are many people around me. Tem muitas pessoas me cercando, muitas pessoas ao meu redor. So around can also be used in that situation, but it can be used as mais ou menos too. Approximately is a little bit more technical, a little bit more formal. Aproximadamente, it's approximately 5 miles. Roughly is just simply means mais ou menos. So rough is something that's not smooth. Rough is something that's not exact. When we use roughly in this sense, then we're using something that it's not exact. It's roughly 5 miles. But again, it's the same thing as saying it's about 5 miles. It's around 5 miles. And then one that I really like is or so. It's 5 miles or so, that I like to compare to por aí. 5 milhas por aí. It's 5 miles or so. Again, as we can see, so has a lot of different meanings. At some point, I'm going to make a video just about so, and I will put the link up and to the right. And my favorite, so we got just, this is where we ended up before. My favorite, mais ou menos, is ish. Very common, very useful, and not very taught. Very, very useful. I'm actually going to be working on a video just for ish, because I think it's very valuable. And so what time will you be there? I'll be there at 6-ish. So ish just means mais ou menos o que veio antes. So I'll be there at 6-ish. Estarei lá às mais ou menos, estarei lá mais ou menos às 6 horas. What color is your house? It's bluish. É mais ou menos azul. So you can put ish. And I was researching yesterday a bunch of things for ish. And, you know, you've got just a lot, especially with numbers. There were, so if you want to say that there were a lot of people and there were about 100 people, you can say there were 100-ish people there. There were 100-ish people there. Teve mais ou menos 100 pessoas lá. Very useful. And the nice thing is you can put it with almost anything, right? You can put it with, we have an adjective here, blue. It was bluish. With numbers, you can always put it with numbers. You can put it with you can put it with just a lot of different things. Now, just a reminder here, mais ou menos, more or less. We don't usually use more or less. It's not wrong. So I put a yellow light here. It's not wrong today. These days, it's not wrong to use. For example, we more or less have to, nós mais ou menos temos que. And so we are going to work hard this year. We more or less have to, nós mais ou menos temos que. So we more or less have to. I use it sometimes when I'm teaching. I noticed after I taught mais ou menos for one of the first times, I noticed that after I said, I used to say, we never say more or less. And then I caught myself saying more or less, but it's usually when I'm teaching and I'm giving a little bit more of a technical, when I teach, I use when I teach in English, I use a language that is a little bit more formal, not exactly formal, but not exactly your day-to-day. Learned that from my mom. Thank you, Mom, for teaching me good English. And then when we get to so, then it's a red light. Don't use so. I'm so today. No, don't say it. Did I even put, I didn't put an X, but I should have put an X on so there. I think I'm going to add an X later. So more or less versus about or around. When we can use more or less, when we can use about or around. About, I would say, is more commonly used than around, but it's probably, 60-40 split. So about, the movie ends at about 9, or the movie ends at around 9. More or less, the weather is more or less the same as yesterday. So I put a sentence about the weather, so it's something a little bit more technical, could be a little bit more formal. The weather is more or less the same as yesterday. An example of kind of, since it was kind of cold, I decided to bring a coat. So here we have since, and one of the main meanings that we've already talked about at the beginning of Intermediate 1 was since as desde. We also have since as sendo que. So this is the second meaning of since, which is sendo que. And so since it was kind of cold, sendo que foi meio, kind of, right? Sendo que foi meio frio, eu decidi trazer uma jaqueta. Since it was kind of cold, I decided to bring a coat, and you can use coat or jacket. Where I'm from, and in my family, we always say coat, almost never say jacket. I think I looked it up, and I don't think I looked it up. I looked it up, and usually jacket is more what you wear right here. Coat can be anything big, it can be a larger kind of covering. But for most of us in the United States, some people use coat, some people use jacket. I think most people don't worry about if it's just a just covers here to here, or if it's a longer one, or what it might be. Eu estou mais ou menos, I'm okay. Like we talked about, I'm okay, or I'm not bad, and not so. Never say I'm so. I wanted to make that absolutely clear. I hope I made that clear. We don't say I'm so. Begin and end. So we have two verbs each when we talk about something that is starting or beginning and something that is ending. So we have begin, which is more formal, and then start is less formal. Those who like video games have, I'm sure, seen the start button. I remember the first console that I had, the first video game console that I had a start button. It's almost always they've had a start button. Press start was one of the first things you ever learn about video games is press start. So start, less formal, and begin, more formal. And then the interesting thing about begin and start is that start is a verb, to start. Start is also a noun. We need to go back to the start. It's not as common, but you can say we need to go back to the start. Precisamos voltar ao começo. Begin is a verb, but it's not a noun. We don't say the begin. Does anybody know what we say for começo that is a little bit more formal than start? O começo is the start, or the, anybody know? No? Beginning. Beginning is the noun, or in other words, começo. Beginning. So you can say we need to go back to the beginning, or we need to go back to the start. Those are two ways to say o começo. I don't like the start. I think it's too informal. So I would only use the start in a very informal situation. I always use the beginning. The beginning is one of those, most of the time we have words that start out as a little bit formal and then go to very formal. In this case, beginning is normal. So remember, I put it in three categories. I put formal, normal, and then informal. And so in the case of beginning, beginning is normal to formal, where start starts off as a noun, it starts off as informal. See, and then I just use it starts, right? So the verb, no problem using start as a verb, but I would not usually use start as the start as a noun. Same thing with finish and end. So looking at finish and end as when something stops, right? So finish is complete, and then end stops is the idea here. I actually had a teacher when I think I was in middle school. I had a teacher, we would say, I'm done. So in most cases, when we say done, which is feito, is literally feito, it's interesting because most of my students, like almost all my students, start off saying if I give them an assignment in class, especially my teenage students, if I give them an assignment in class, when they're done, they always say finish, right? But we don't say finish when we finish something. Usually we say done. I'm done, for example. You can say I'm finished, but most people say I'm done. That's the regular day-to-day thing that we say. And when we would say to my middle school teacher, we would say I'm done, and my middle school teacher would say, are you done or are you finished? Are you done or are you finished? And why is that? Because and I'm actually going to add here to stop. I'm going to add done.
Finish seria terminar?
Yeah, so the thing is, that's a very good question. The thing is that they both mean terminar. If you finish, you terminar. If you end, you also terminar. But when we look at synonyms for finish and end, so the key is the main difference between finish and end is when we look at the synonyms for finish and end. The best synonym for finish is completar. The best synonym for end is terminar. Parar, because they're both terminar. So what's the difference between completar and parar? Usually we use completar when something has gone complete, right? It has gone all of the way around. It has finished. It is complete. And usually we use and when something just stops. So for example, a project. You want to finish the project. You want to get to its completion, get to the end. And the example on the other side for stop, I like to use government programs. So there's going to be a new president in Brazil, and some programs might stop. Those programs won't finish because they didn't go all the way through, but they could stop and then other programs start in their place. So that's an excellent question. And the main difference, if you look at finish and end, they both can be translated as terminar. But if you look at the difference between completar and parar, then you get a little bit better idea of the difference between finish and end. So most of the time, if we look at finish as complete and end as stop, at the end of a movie, it's the end, right? But didn't that movie complete? Wouldn't that kind of cause a problem for my idea? Well, when we look at a movie, for example, when we talk about the end of a movie, movies can have 2, 3, 4, right? We've seen Star Wars has what, like 10 movies now? Harry Potter's got, Harry Potter now has about 10 movies. So the story isn't complete in movies, and that's why we say the end. So this is my explanation of why it says the end at the end of a movie instead of the finish, because the story can continue on. And at the end of a book, it also says the end. So same kind of thing. Stories, you can have one book and then maybe even 10, 15, 20 years later, you can have a second book. So that story wasn't completed yet. It just ended. Any questions there?
Professor, quando fala, I finish my exercise, or I done my exercise.
Are you talking about past, present, or future? Because if it's past, you need to put it in the past. Past tense verbs. I finish is eu termino, right? Eu completo. So if you're talking eu completei, so I finished. Yes, I finished my exercises. Gives the idea I completed them. If you say I stopped or I'm done, you can say I'm done with my exercises. That you can use that because again, with exercises, you can be talking about the individual exercise that you have completed, or you can talk about you stopped for that time and then you're going to continue again. So in that case, you could use either one. There are some cases like exercises. That's a good example of one where it's not going to change a lot if you use finish or if you use done. That's an excellent question. Who can give me an example of something that you have finished? Anybody? Has anybody finished anything?
I finished my electrical project.
Good. I finished my electrical project. And then just remember that when we talk about past tense verbs, past tense regular verbs, that where the original verb doesn't end with a T or D sound, finished. Okay, so only when we have verbs where the original verb ended with a T or D sound, like this one, we don't say want, but we say wanted. In this case of T or D, then we have I. But in this case, where there is no T or D, there is no I. There's just the I from ish, but not finished. This is one of the biggest mistakes, pronunciation mistakes, that Brazilian students make. And not just Brazilian students. A lot of students, I think Latin language students make this mistake a lot. Or Romance languages, languages that come from Latin. Okay, good. Now tell me something, Vani, tell me something that you stopped without finishing. You get the hard one.
I don't understand.
Something that you stopped without finishing. So what's the difference between finish and stop?
Finish, completa o processo todo. Stop é só parou e pode continuar.
Exactly. Parou, and many times parou, and you pode recomeçar muitas vezes, mas às vezes não. So is there anything that you have stopped that you didn't finish?
I stop, I am.
No, so
The
I
book.
am. So if you say I am stopping, eu estou no processo de parar, right? Estou parando. So either I stopped in the past, or you can use I am stopping. That works if it's something that you are in the process of stopping. That works.
I'm stopping the book.
Okay, so you're
Okay.
stopping reading the book.
Yes.
Okay. Which book?
Não sei como é que fala em inglês.
What is it in Portuguese?
The Mount, a montanha azul.
Okay, Blue Mountain, probably.
The Blue Mountain.
I guess I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. Okay, good. So in that case, usually with stop, more often we don't as often use I am stopping, but like for example, I'm stopping smoking or something like that. But in this case, we would probably say if it's already done, then I stopped. If it's reading a book, it's something that isn't really a process to stop. Usually we use I'm stopping if it's a process, but if you stop reading, usually just boom, I stopped. It's done.
Okay.
So I stopped reading, or I have stopped reading the book. Yeah, exactly. So you didn't finish the book, but you stopped reading it. That's a perfect example. Actually, I think I'm going to steal that next time. Very good. Okay. So remember start and end. So the key points about start: begin from some point in time. I'll start a new diet tomorrow. The start of the school year in Brazil is in February. And you can say in the second sentence, the beginning of the school year in Brazil is in February. Doesn't change anything. It's just a little bit more formal, but not formal. So it's normal. I'll start a new diet tomorrow. I'll begin a new diet tomorrow would be a little bit more formal way to say that. And a final part of something. When does the movie end? And because we have that whole idea of the end at the end of a movie, we usually use end with movies. When does the movie end? When does, on what page does the book end? We usually use end with books and movies. A lot of arts, concerts. When does a concert end instead of finish? We use end with a lot of things that would be considered artistic, writing, movies, books, those kinds of things. I'll finish my work at the end of the day. No final do dia, at the end of the day. So the end of the day is something interesting because we can use when the day finishes, but we also commonly use end when we talk about the day. And so my hint, my tip of when we use end and when we use finish, it's most of the time it will be true. Most of the time it works. It's like most of my hints, that in any language there's not 100%. If we're talking about the prepositions for and to, which I'll put a video up and to the right if I remember. If we're talking about end and finish, all of the tips that we have are not 100%, but most of the time will work. And if you follow the tips, then most of the time you'll get things right. Dessert. So dessert has two S's. Dessert is a dish served at the end of the meal. To go back for seconds. So to go back for seconds. So this is an interesting expression that we have when we want, so we eat something and then we go back for seconds. Voltamos para segundos. Right? So repetir, when it's repetir comida, we say go back for seconds. And when we have dessert, there are two S's because we want seconds. Tem dois S's porque nós queremos repetir. Queremos repetir a sobremesa. So the whole family wants to have cake for dessert. A família inteira quer ter bolo pela sobremesa. Our favorite dessert is vanilla ice cream. Nossa sobremesa favorita, predileta, é sorvete de baunilha. After dessert, we usually have coffee. Depois da sobremesa, geralmente tomamos café. So dessert, two S's. Dessert or desert? So I want to order dessert. Everybody, let's repeat. Dessert.
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 So you can see the stressed syllable is the second syllable, dessert. And written, it's two S's. I'm from the desert. Eu sou do deserto is desert. Desert. Everybody, let's repeat. Desert.
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 Okay, so then the stress is on the first syllable. And instead of de, we have de. De. Both of them have zert, but it's dessert and then desert. And to remember, don't eat dessert in the desert. Don't eat dessert in the desert. Otherwise, it will melt. Derreter. If you eat ice cream, if you eat your dessert in the desert, it will melt. Vai derreter. Don't eat dessert in the desert. Como assim? How's that? How so? What do you mean? Okay, so we have como assim, which is when we are just asking, como assim? So when you want someone to explain further, then you can use how's that or how so. But when we have this last one is como assim, like, o que você quer dizer com isso? O que você quer dizer com isso? What do you mean? Como assim? So somebody says, I don't know, you're not a good person. What do you mean? O que você quer dizer com isso? So remember, when we talked before about the meanings, os sentidos, the meanings of mean, one of those of what do you mean is o que você quer dizer. Mean pode ser significar. What does that word mean, o que significa aquela palavra, but it can also be quer dizer. O que você quer dizer com isso? What do you mean? So how's that? Or how so? And then what do you mean if you want to use quer dizer? Badly. In a severe, unsuccessful, harmful way. Both buildings were badly damaged by the fire. Os dois prédios foram badly damaged, seria muito, I would translate as muito danificados, foram muito danificados pelo fogo. I think she plays the guitar very badly. Ela toca violão ruim. Ela não é muito boa, não. The event was badly organized. O evento não foi bem organizado. He needs the money really badly. Ele realmente precisa muito. So badly, really badly here é para dar mais ênfase. He needs the money really badly, and most people say he needs the money really bad. It's not the most correct, but many people cut off the ly and say really bad. Little kids, I need to go to the bathroom really bad. Realmente, it's so if you say I really need to go to the bathroom, or I need to go to the bathroom really badly, it just adds more emphasis when you use badly. And like I said, most people just say really bad, although it's not entirely correct, but a lot of people use that. So other ways to say really bad, if something is really bad, realmente ruim, are awful. Let's repeat, awful. Awful.
Awful. Awful.
Is one option is awful, another option is horrible. Everybody, horrible.
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 And then terrible.
Terrible.
So literally horrible, horrível, terrible, terrível, and awful, horrível, terrível. We don't have, that I know of, we don't have a good cognate for awful. So some examples of terrible, horrible, and awful. They're very similar. The weather was awful. Tempo foi horrível. He's a pretty awful driver. That was a horrible thing to say. So ele é motorista muito ruim. That was a horrible thing to say. Foi uma coisa horrível para ter dito, para falar. He's got a horrible cold. So we can use terrible, awful, and horrible when we talk about sickness. A horrible cold. Resfriado horrível. We have just received some terrible news. Acabamos de receber notícias terríveis. You're a terrible liar. Você é mentiroso. Não é bom mentiroso. Você é mentiroso horrível. A coisa interessante aqui de you're a terrible liar, the interesting thing about this is it doesn't mean that you lie a lot. It means you don't lie well, which probably is a good thing, right? It's a good thing if you don't lie well. You can't become a politician, but usually it means you're not a terrible person if you're a terrible liar. It means that when you try to lie, people can tell it's obvious that you're lying. And so you can be a bad liar or even a terrible liar, then it's obvious when you're trying to lie. Parece que one of the most useful things, I think, in day-to-day conversations, parece que, I guess she's not happy. It seems like she's not happy. It looks like she's not happy. It sounds like she's not happy. So, does anybody want to take a guess at what the differences in these would be? I guess she's not happy. It seems like she's not happy. Nobody's brave enough to give it a try. So let's start then with, I guess she's not happy. So I guess is, I consider it kind of problematic because I guess 100% of the time, I guess is translated in movies and in series as acho. If it's I guess, acho que, he guesses, ele acha. Okay, so it's always translated as acho. And sometimes it is acho que. So a possible translation of I guess she's not happy could be eu acho que ela não está feliz. But a better translation most of the time is parece que ela não está feliz. So usually when we say I guess, there is something that makes us think that. There is something that brings us to that conclusion. So for example, I can say, I think it's going to rain today. I think it's going to rain today. Why? There doesn't need to be a reason. It could just be, I just think so. I just think it's going to rain. You know, apenas acho que vai chover. But if it gets cloudy, the wind starts to pick up, the clouds are dark, then I can say, I guess it's going to rain. Why? Why I guess? Because something brought me to that conclusion. Causa e efeito. Alguma coisa me causou pensar que vai chover ou vai alguma coisa. So sometimes if we say, I guess in something, I guess I'm going to leave. There has to be some kind of reason. I don't just say, I guess I'm going to leave. Para dizer eu acho que vou sair. It can sound a little strange. In that case, it would be I think. So most of the time, if something brought us to that conclusion, then we use I guess. And if there isn't some reason for you to think that, then in most cases we use I think. When we talk about it seems like is probably the best translation for parece que. It seems like, me dá a impressão que ela não está feliz. It seems like she's not happy. Parece que ela não está feliz. In the case of the rain, the weather, it seems like it's going to rain. I can also use in that situation. Parece que vai chover. So it seems like is just a general impression. It looks like, though, is if I see something. If I see something and I want to make it clear that it was because I saw it. So when the clouds come, the wind starts, and I see it, I can say, it looks like it's going to rain. It looks like it's going to rain. Or if if Vani comes to class and she's talking in very short sentences and her face is very closed, she looks mad, then I can say it looks like she's not happy because it's something that I saw. So I can make it clear that I got that impression because of something that I saw. If I hear something, so if I'm here and downstairs, Val is throwing things, breaking things. She never does that. But if for some reason she was breaking things and throwing things and moving things around and it's really loud, then I can say it sounds like she's not happy. I can't say it looks like, right? Because I didn't see it, but it sounds like she's not happy. But I can always use it seems like she's not happy. Okay, it seems like she's not happy. It can be anything that brought me to that conclusion, where it looks like usually is something that I saw, and it sounds like is usually something that I heard. So all of these can be translated as parece que. Parece que ela não está feliz. I guess she's not happy. It seems like she's not happy. Parece que. It looks like. Parece que ela não está feliz por causa de alguma coisa que eu vi. It sounds like she's not happy. Parece que ela não está feliz por causa de alguma coisa que eu ouvi. And so why do we have them if most of them, if they mean mostly the same thing because it's a little bit more precise. It's a little bit more precise, especially if you say it looks like or it sounds like. It's a little bit more precise as to why you got to that conclusion. Okay, any questions on that?
Todas essas expressões são usadas,
Yes.
assim, com frequência?
Yes. Good question. Yep. All of them are very common. I would
Teacher,
say-
aí, no caso, vai depender do que eu vou falar para usar cada uma delas, assim, do contexto da frase.
Yes, exactly. Less with, it seems like probably is the one that you would need to least worry about context, because it seems like can be used in most every situation where you want to say parece que. But with looks like and sounds like, then it's a little bit more based on the context, and then I guess is a little bit more open than those two, but I would say not as open as it seems like. But the thing is if you watching movies and series and things, I guess is probably the most used of the four, because it also can be, I think, it can be used to say I think. So it has, because it has more uses, I would say it's probably used more, but not always used the same as parece que. So in my experience, I would say to say parece que, it seems like is probably used the most, but because I guess has the other meaning of eu acho, then it's probably overall more commonly used.
Professor, elas usam no início da frase, pode ser final, meio, posso dizer...
Excellent question.
The
Fantastic.
music sounds like good.
Excellent question. 1 second. Excuse me. Okay, so that's a good question. I guess is most commonly used at the beginning, but can be used at the end. She's not happy, I guess. And I would say it's a little bit more formal to put, I guess, at the beginning, a little bit less formal to put it at the end. With it seems like, it looks like, and it sounds like, I would say 90% of the time it's at the beginning. It actually sounds wrong. I've heard people say it seems like, or it looks like, or it sounds like at the end, but to me it sounds wrong. But I don't know if that's actually true. It just, to my ear, it sounds wrong to put them at the end. But like I say, I've heard people use them. So I would say my suggestion would be put them at the beginning. These three always put at the beginning, just because they sound wrong to me, but I don't know that that's like English according to Willy. That's not like something that I've actually looked up and found. Really good question. So to seem looks like, to seem, to give a certain impression, probably. It seems that the weather in California is very bad. Parece que o tempo na Califórnia é muito ruim. She doesn't seem too worried. Ela não parece preocupada demais. Looks like, possible future, to be similar in appearance. It sure looks like snow today. Another meaning for look like. So one thing that we need to remember about look, so we have look. Look has quite a few meanings depending on what's around it, right? So look, and if we say the thing, then we have at. We've talked about that. Look at, olhar. Actually, let's do this. So if we take the sentence, I look very much like my dad. And very much would be more formal. Most people would say I look a lot Look a lot like my dad. So look, let's go through some different meanings of look. Who can tell me another meaning of look? Anybody?
Olhar.
Good. Yeah, that was, I think you cheated, but okay, that works. What does look?
Seria veja.
Veja, yeah, ver é mais see, but it's possible. In some situations, it's more commonly olhar, but in some situations, it can be varied. Who remembers what look for means?
Procurar.
Yes. So look for, procurar. We have one, look to. We don't use that often, but it is ver como exemplo. I look to my dad for advice. I look to my dad for advice. Or even I look to someone as an example. Example. Any others? How about look like? What does this sentence mean? I look a lot like my dad. Anybody have a guess what I look?
Look like seria assim, parecer?
Yeah,
Ser
exactly.
parecido?
Exactly. You look like your mom. You look like your grandpa. Okay, so now aqui você olha como o seu pai, que se nós pensarmos que look é só olhar ou ver, aí seria você olha do mesmo jeito que seu pai olha, alguma coisa assim, não faria muito sentido. But look like para ser com ou ser parecido. So if we look at this last sentence, I look very much like my father. What does that mean? Who can tell me?
Me parece muito com meu pai.
Eu pareço. Eu pareço
Eu
muito com meu
pareço.
pai. Yep, exactly. Eu sou muito parecido com meu pai, eu pareço muito com meu pai. Okay? So that is it today for lesson 45. We will finish lesson 45 next class on Thursday morning, and then we will correct it, and then the next step is to do the review of lessons 41 to 45, and then after that we will do the review of the whole module of intermediate 1. So get scared. No, don't get scared, but study is a good idea. What we do for the review of the whole book of intermediate 1 is I will take each of the reviews 5 and 5. So after every 5 reviews, after every 5 lessons, we have the review. I will use those exact reviews that are in your workbook to do the review. Okay. Any questions on that? So that's our schedule is on Thursday. We will finish the little bit that's left of lesson 45. Then we will correct. We might start the review of lessons 41 to 45 if there's time. If not, on next Tuesday, we will do the 41 to 45 reviews. And then Thursday, we will do the book review. All right. So Study, study, study. It's a good time to
Todo-
study.
Todos isso feriado.
Yes. Finally, a holiday that is not on Wednesday. What's the deal?
Holiday.
Every holiday was a Wednesday. Okay, so skip Tuesday. We'll go all of that except skip Tuesday. So one day forward on all of them. Thank you. Beto's the one of our retired people, but he always knows the holidays. Is it because your kids in school? Is that why you know the holidays?
No.
Because I should know the holidays because I celebrate them. It's part of the reason I'm in Brazil is because there are so many holidays, but I never keep up on them. All right, guys. See you on Thursday. Have a great